Back again on the Fireside chat that's shared mobility, personal commuting, especially for business, pandemic business challenges. Welcome, Saul.
Well, hello everyone. Hope you hear me well.
So we have
Hey,
the
Saul.
speakers, Adam Ridgway again, CEO, One MOTO, based out of Dubai and UK. We have Saul Tarazona, co-founder, CEO, Aerospace. He is into vertical mobility, vertical air mobility. So over to you. So let's start the session. Talk about the
All right.
personal commuting, shared mobility challenges.
Well, the mobility challenges that I'm actually live in Dubai as well, Adam. I lived there for 13 years. Now I'm moving between Miami and Bogota. So one problem that every single city I go around the world looking at the same problem, which is traffic. There's just enough of the cars that we can get on the street. There is a limited space. 1 kilometer of pavement it will cost around $1 million. Places like India, places that are not so developed as the first world countries actually are looking for alternatives to road and cars. So one differentiation factor of eJet Aerospace is that we actually have a new propulsion system which is fully electric. So it's not every day that you get like the opportunity. Imagine if you put yourselves, if I can use your imagination for a little while, is imagine yourselves in the spot where you are able to be part of, be the one that actually understands how a piston engine works when everybody is riding a horse. Once when you put yourself in that position and you start thinking, wow, these guys actually have a brand new propulsion system that is, we call it cold jet propulsion system, which is very high performance. This actually can be used on the ground, under the water, above the water, and of course in the air. So this is why we choose from all the different options of having a brand new propulsion system. We pick aviation because it's safe. It's safer than cars. It's actually something that doesn't need a runway. So you save a lot of money in the infrastructure. You only need a pad. Doesn't need to be a helipad. So I want to highlight that. It's just a place with enough space so you can land. So it can be a dirt road. It can be a piece of land. It can be an unprepared terrain. So this is something that is very important for us because we can actually roll out very quickly and very cheaply.
Okay, so your focus was
But
on air mobility, the plans. So Adam,
That's right.
you tell me how do you plan to solve the pandemic business challenge, especially in the commuting, personal commuting on the road, on the ground.
yeah, it's a good question. I don't really see, it depends actually. I don't really see it as being a tremendous problem due to the pandemic, because if you look at the last mile sector globally, it's absolutely boomed from companies, grocery companies that were doing 12,000 deliveries a week and now doing 40,000 a week. So really the problem comes to, and if we just talk in Dubai, which I've got some accurate stats from, got various companies that are doing 1.2 million deliveries a month. Some are doing 38,000 deliveries a week. So there's a huge amount of deliveries. And with the research that we did, 86% are doing ordering 5 times a week, and that's products, even medicines as well as food and groceries. So it's a hugely needed hyper-growth industry that has only been accelerated by the pandemic. When you start looking at the shared mobility, of course, there's been a crash and burn with those because of all of the complications that come with sanitization and usage, and obviously curfew, lockdown, and so on. So is that going to get back on track? Maybe. I don't necessarily believe in certain forms of the P2P sharing vehicle forms. But saying that, one thing that I do firmly believe in and is the convenience that's offered to mobility in general. And I'd like to get Saul's, I'll ask you a question in a minute, mate. But when you start looking at the convenience, when you leave your house, apartment, villa, office, you want to know that a vehicle's right there when you want it.
Right.
Now, with AI and autonomous vehicles and so on, yes, it can learn a pattern, but that pattern isn't going to be consistent unless you were a robot yourself, which obviously we're not yet. But if you start looking at the environment of convenience, and then you start looking at the research that's been done into the future generation, so the generation Z and whatever the one after that's going to be called, are people going to be driving? Can they afford to learn? Are they even going to want to have a car? Are they ever going to need to drive anywhere if everything's being delivered? So really, when it comes to transport, yes, you have terrible congestion. Air pollution has been reported, I think it was in the Times earlier this year, maybe a couple of months ago, that scientists have said that air pollution is twice as deadly as they once reported. So it used to, they reported it was 3 to 4 years off your life, whereas now you're looking at sort of 6 to 8 years off your life. And when you're, say, slightly younger, 8 years off your life, you don't know when the end of it is, so it doesn't really matter too much. As you get older, you'd love an extra 8 years with your friends, family, loved ones. So yes, EVs are a huge solution to the environment. Switching to two-wheeled commuting vehicles obviously is huge, but you need the data in order to monitor, track, maintain, understand, learn, educate. Data is going to be incredibly important to mobility, and not necessarily saying about automotive, but if we look at, say, the vertical or air transport, Saul, when you look at the environment that we're in now, to have that, say, I believe the greatest form of mobility is flight. As a skydiver, I absolutely vouch for it as well. But when you think the switch and transition from ICE that our generations have grown up with, from ICE vehicles to electric, there is a big switch, and there's a time frame. Then you look at the conversations that are going on now for autonomous vehicles, and then you look at drones in terms of delivery and transportation, flying taxis and so on. What do you see from the understanding of where we currently are, as in not that mass adoption for EVs, but you go ICE vehicles, where do you see that tipping point in terms of duration before, say, the beauty and wonder of aerospace commuting? From now to when do you think that would be adopted, and what would the demographic of users be?
For when, it will be hard to tell, but what I can tell you is maybe is how. I'm a big fan. I've been an advisor on emerging technologies. So with big data and a few simple payment solutions, you can actually make sure that you're gonna have a ride closer to you whenever you need it. If you give them enough time, yeah, it's not gonna be I just decide that I need to go now and I'm gonna have something to pick me up and take me somewhere. No, if you can plan your day, and we all do one way or another. There are ways of big data that you can actually find a ride and a driver or a pilot nearby to you, maybe in 30 minutes or in an hour, or somebody will come from a different place. I think that is already possible. You don't need even big data to do this. Payment where payment will be very easy as well. The problem is that aviation is not cheap. A pilot is very expensive. The roads are very expensive. Landing pad rides is very expensive. So if you cut costs across, you can make aviation cheap. Yeah, of course you need a technology for that. Current technology, if you think about it, where we are now is 1 hour of a helicopter ride will cost you $550. That is including a pilot. That costs you $150 per hour. So that's where we are now. How we go from there to maybe pay $20 per hour on a ride on a vehicle, hopefully that doesn't contaminate. Hopefully it's electric, even if it's a car. But how we go from where we got now is a matter of money. How much is gonna cost? Whatever you can do to cut cost and take us to find the balance of cars or electric cars or the taxi that contaminates to one that doesn't for the same price or less, that would be great. Incentives, you were talking about incentives, government incentives. They're not so easy to get. I've been trying. So far, yes, they're saying, look, you're providing jobs. Great, you have an amazing technology. And where is the money? Where is the money to actually launch it? Where what you need as an entrepreneur is funding. You already got the technology, you already got an idea, you already got something, and usually is where you find the balance of this is how much money the governments or the private investors are willing to put so you can actually roll out an amazing technology that is going to help us all. So that bridge is a little bit hard, is not so easy, and is definitely the tipping point that you were talking. Cash, there's amazing technologies there, but they're lacking funds. They're solving a real problem. They're really helping the environment, but they don't have the funding to go out.
Yeah, I don't know whether you saw my presentation just before this,
I
but one
was
of the
like 20 minutes ago. Yes, I was there.
yeah, thank you. I'm glad someone watched it. The, one of the words that I've been bouncing around for quite some time is collaboration. I mentioned it earlier, and a collaboration, whether it's we went through an equity crowdfunding campaign towards the end of last year, which wasn't necessarily to raise the funds that we want for that global expansion, but it was actually more of a marketing initiative to create a series of brand ambassadors and brand advocates. Now, the money that we raised is going to be insignificant to maybe the amount of funding is needed for, say, the air transportation. However, like you said, those private investors, if there's just, there could be a few thousand of them, but they're all equity shareholders in the business in one subscription form or another. That then gets the adopters involved. So as opposed to a government needing to put in X million, it could be lots putting in a smaller amount, but they all have a part of the future. So obviously there's a complete restructure of a company that's needed for that. But where I've noticed over a little while of, I don't know whether, whenever you've seen James Bond in those films, years and years ago, or in fact, many other films that were produced up until about, say, 12 years ago, if you ever saw an aerial shot within a film, it was incredible, seeing the skyline of New York or of, in fact, any valley that the world has to offer. But say 12 years ago, where drones then became used in film, and it allowed cinematographers to tell a very different story from a very different perspective. And as I said, as a skydiver, someone who loves the ability to, say, fly, I'm all for what you're doing, because you get to see the world from a different perspective and a really beautiful perspective. And I truly believe that beyond drone deliveries of products and services and whatever else, I believe the real beauty of air transportation is going to be for tourism. Because you go to a city and for a relatively small amount of money, you're going to be able to, with your family, say a family of X, are going to be able to get in whatever the vehicle is and go and explore a city from a totally different perspective than you would ever do. That to me that's better than a wheel that's planted somewhere with great views, or an incredibly tall building that also has great views. That's static. The moment you're in a, say a hot air balloon, or you're in a autonomous vehicle flying, you're in an aeroplane, wherever you are, to see the world from the perspective of a bird is incredibly beautiful. And I think if the tourism agencies were to adopt that and offer that as a not just a talking point, but an experience for tourists, I think that is the catalyst for change. Because then you could have the 13 million people that come to Dubai each year. I imagine if Dubai or the UAE is one of those first countries to adopt or have that uptake, 13 million people will also be flying in one of your eJets. Anyway, that's what I reckon. I support you.
Thank you for that. We have to support each other as entrepreneurs. So back on the topic of shared mobility versus personal commuting, yeah, I find that massive transportation actually is useful, but just at the time that you don't want to be surrounded by so many people, and you can only go to main places from point to point, and then you need to find your way to different places. It's like the peer-to-peer thing about connecting with people or business. Basically, there is a highway, yeah, great, you can move people massively from point A to B, but at some point from B to C to the actual final destination, you're gonna have to find a ride. So there's only very few, and I like the other fact that personal transportation vehicles like a scooter, or you were saying a moped or something like that, that actually take you yourself to your final destination, and then you actually want to have a ride whenever you leave the meeting, so you can move yourself away as fast as possible. And massive transportation doesn't do that. You always have to go to the massive transportation. The massive transportation doesn't go to you. So I'm leaning towards actually personal transportation. Maybe not so one person, maybe two people, maybe three people. Like I love the Uber share. That actually works very well in Europe. Actually, very well, because the people actually move from the same point A to the same point B at the exact same time and the exact same schedule from Monday to Friday. So that actually makes sense. That now you combine it with the multiculturality that we have in Dubai. You combine it with non-schedule people that just work day and night like entrepreneurs do. So I'm leaning towards of a not just a person, maybe 2-3 passenger ride, like a car that can fly. I think it will make sense, a little bit more sense than a massive bus moving you around. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree to some extent, because there's it's all about the convenience. So, for if you just take public transport, it works very well. There's always buses. If we just take buses, the metro, and what the government's done to put in the infrastructure, it's almost like reverse engineering putting in a public transport system where other parts of the world, it's just ingrained in the DNA of that country or city. So I think the government's done incredibly well. But then, because the cost of taxis is relatively inexpensive to most, then for me to say walk to a bus stop, get a bus possibly 45 minutes to get to a shopping mall, that's incredibly inconvenient. Whereas for a few extra dirhams, I can just jump in a taxi and get there, because that's more convenient to me. So in terms of public transport, would I share a vehicle with someone if our schedule works out the same? I wouldn't have any issues with that in normal, say, circumstances. Would I love to fly from point A to point B? Absolutely. But that's just a personal preference. But where would I land? If I had to land a kilometre away from where my meeting is, that then wouldn't be convenient. So I probably wouldn't choose that. When you look at the mopeds side that we're on the motorbikes that we've focused on, to know that I can get on a bike and I don't have any traffic issues, and anyone that knows me knows that I'm never late for anything, because I sort of plan my time well, but I'm on two wheels, so I can always get anywhere without any issues. That to me is convenient, but it's not going to be convenient to everyone. Not everyone's going to have a license or even want to ride a motorbike, or don't understand and potentially think that it's dangerous, whatever the scenario. So I do, from the points I agree with you, it sort of boils down to that one fundamental word, and that's convenience. And everyone's going to have their own, I suppose, barometer of convenience.
Definitely. So besides having your own vehicle whenever you finish your meeting, what do you think will add on the convenience side on your mopeds? Can I call them mopeds? Yeah.
Yeah, you can call them anything you want. Yeah, you've got the convenience, but it's also affordability, because if you take the car, I think anyone that works in automotive will tell you that cars are dormant for 90% of their life. They're parked either outside your house or in the supermarket or in the office. And so 90% of that car that you've worked hard for, you've dreamt of owning this vehicle, and you've got it on finance, whatever the payment model is, you end up owning a vehicle that for 90% of its life is dormant, but it's heavily hemorrhaging in terms of depreciation. So it's not a very good investment, and I think everyone can stand by that. If you can make a vehicle affordable, which is a lot of the peer-to-peer sharing models, use at your convenience, I think it's fantastic, but it's not convenient for everyone, but the business model works. If you then take leasing, so you don't own the commitment of the outright CapEx, but you have that OpEx consideration every month or every year, whichever subscription package, I think that works in terms of sort of convenient for you. But really, for me, it's about having that convenient vehicle that's always available and it's affordable. And you take that CapEx model into an OpEx, it doesn't take much to make that conversion of a decision, or the buying trigger is going to be, the objections are going to be a lot less. Then it's about the experience. And if we look at electric vehicles, you might have about 15 buttons compared to 60 odd buttons in the nice vehicle. You have a lot less moving parts. So the servicing, the maintenance is convenient because it's affordable, because there's not that much to do. But the experience of getting into an EV or even onto an EV is fantastic. Then you've got the technology. With our generation have grown up with technology. Our parents' generation, they've lived through it to the point where it's become very, very confusing for most. But we've grown up with it. Our children are embedded within their DNA, unfortunately or fortunately, they're embedded with technology, with devices. They learn, they go to school with devices, not books. So we're that sort of transition generation. Now everything's about tech. So again, one of the values of MOTO is also about the technology. So I think affordability, convenience, experience, technology, bind all those together, and that is really the essence of what, say, mobility moving forward is.
Yeah, I do believe on emerging technologies when they combine together. So now you think on an app that has everything for you, localization, you have your payment system, you actually control your life by looking at your phone every day at any point. So are you thinking of having like a small group of mopeds localized in certain parts of the city, so I can just book one, go and pick one and take it and leave it in a next spot, like the same way you do that in Amsterdam? You pick up a bike or you pick up this shareable vehicle that actually is usable for the entire day.
Yeah, it's a nice question. Thank you. That is part of our business approach of being flexible, or being agile, I should say. So if you have one of the ride sharing apps, we can put our vehicles on their app. The big problem is with a lot of, when you don't own something, you don't have accountability. And unfortunately, many of us humans don't look after it as much as if we spent our hard-earned cash on it, because of the consequence that comes with mistreating something. You get a hire car, you drive it like you stole it. You don't drive it like you've saved your entire life to invest in this. So if we were to go down that model, are we going to end up with an operational misfortune because people don't necessarily look after them? We are in a position now and discussions about providing our vehicles, whether it's the e-bikes or the mopeds, to some of these service providers to be able to lease them out. But it'd be a lease to own model, or a lease over a long-term lease, 9, 12 months, that type of thing. Because then you have that ownership and accountability. We're in discussions with one government agency to offer a series of 30 of our vehicles at a couple of different metro stations as a sandbox for say a mass rollout. But then it comes with the the policies and regulations surrounding licensing, you do need a motorcycle license. In other parts of the world, you don't. You just need a driving license. So as you said about the melting pot of education and training, there needs to be some uniformity. And we don't quite have that yet. So would it work here? Not yet. But would that model providing vehicles in other parts, like you said, Amsterdam, Barcelona, London, Paris, even parts of the US or cities in the US, absolutely it would. But I don't know whether that's going to be sort of a long-term vision. If you can make it affordable and convenient, I don't know, ownership, I still think is the way forward.
How much it costs to own one of these?
Oh, now this is where I get excited. So as I said in the presentation, 90% of our business is B2B. So the last mile delivery motorcycles. And the average petrol motorcycle, which you'll see 15,000 of them every day, is the cost of the bike is about 7,500 dirhams with another 1,500 dirhams roughly for a box. Then you've got your servicing, your maintenance, and then you've got your fuel. Some companies, 300 dirhams a month, some 450 a month, and combinations. Take that over a 3-year lifespan. That will cost you 65,000 dirhams to operate that one vehicle for 3 years. Whereas an electric vehicle, it will cost you 16,000 dirhams. That's on the CapEx model. So we've quoted recently for 1,000 vehicles, that investment will pay for itself within 5 to 7 months at conservative levels. On a worst case scenario, 9 months. And there's nothing, not a single thing that any fleet operator, food delivery aggregator, whichever label we have, there's not a single thing they could do to their business right now that would have such an immediate impact on their bottom line. So the cost of ownership is incredibly low. And the cost of, is incredibly low, as we all know with EVs. But the greatest benefit right now in working in the environment of last mile delivery that we do in the UAE and how it's managed is the riders. I am very much attached to the working model of and how they're treated. Very high pressure, very low data in terms of communication, route optimization. A lot of them have to pay for their own fuel. They have to also pay for their own visa. Some of them don't have healthcare. With all of those costs, and because of a hyper demand and a lack of supply, you've got these guys working far longer hours than they should do compared to global industry driving hours. They're under such tremendous pressure. There's accidents and fatalities. There's more fatalities last year than there were in any other year on motorcycles from delivery riders. It shouldn't happen. It doesn't need to happen. But there does need to be a change. And that change is unfortunately an operational one. And with an operational change comes confusion or element of education. So it's incredibly important for the delivery riders to see some of the benefits. But unfortunately, if we save the cost of fuel, a lot of the operators might profit that because they want to make profit from their bottom line because they're in this commission war at the moment. So it sounds like I'm really pitching my MOTO and EVs. I'm not, but that's the sort of fundamental answer.
Oh, I love the answer. So my question was towards what will it take actually for me to dump the car and go into a moped? Yeah, how much is going to cost me? It seems like it's going to be fairly feasible and actually doable. There's not going to be too much of my expenditure. My questions will be towards how many kilometers can I ride with one full charge?
So you've got, depending on your riding style, is around 150 kilometers.
Ooh, that's good.
And that's less than what you would travel most days.
How long it will take for me to recharge it completely?
80% in 1 hour, or a full charge is 3 to 4 hours. And they charge with any
perfect.
3-pin socket. So any wall socket. I go to cafes and charge my vehicle the same way I would my laptop or mobile phone. And on the bike, the new version that I've got, I've traveled 1,200 kilometers since January, and it's cost me just over 10 dirhams in all costs. My other bike I've had for 3 years, and the only servicing I've done is top up the brake fluid, and I wasn't even charged for, so that didn't even cost me anything. So the cost of operational expense on one of our vehicles is, it's minimal.
So the battery replacement, of course, in Dubai we have one of the warmest environment. Is the worst environment for batteries. If you're coming from Europe or any part of the world that is not Arab, your battery lasts half of their normal life, from 4 years in a car to 2 years in Dubai. So how you manage this? I mean, how replaceable are your batteries?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. I'll start asking you some in a minute because it sounds like the Adams show. But the batteries come with a 3-year warranty, and they swap in and swap out. So some of our corporate customers or even private customers, they have several batteries, so they can just swap them in and out within 10 seconds and carry on going. But 3 years ago, we actually developed the vehicles and tested them during July, August, and September, during the hottest months of the summer in the Middle East, or certainly the UAE. And we tested them, and lithium-ion batteries actually work better in warmer climates. They just get up to sort of that optimal temperature that little bit quicker. So our batteries come, as I said, with a 3-year warranty, and after that, it doesn't mean they need replacing. It just means that you'll see a 5 to 10% degradation year on year. So we've calculated, and the engineers have calculated, you're looking at least 5 to 6 years before the degradation is enough to replace that battery. And the good thing is we've got that recycling afterlife as well.
That actually makes a lot of sense. So what are you looking in the future for the batteries? That actually going to change your entire ecosystem. The same for us. Batteries are going to be how we run the world. So what do you see coming? What are you looking forward to see in the battery industry?
In terms of batteries, there's so many conversations. Are we going to go with graphene? Is it LiFePO4? Is it solid state, and so on? And I love the conversations, but I also love the fact that we haven't invested in battery tech. And it's a huge investment, and there's some absolute game-changing players out there that are far more expert than we could ever be. So our focus is to work and collaborate with the best. And we used to use one supplier, and their performance wasn't giving us the optimal performance we needed. So we swapped suppliers, and it didn't affect our operation at all. We could just swap suppliers and off we go. The nice thing is, and this is how our business is built in this very modular form, that as we launch in Africa, at the moment, Africa, as far as I know anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not producing batteries. But over the next 5 years, the investment and infrastructure and manufacturing, they may possibly produce batteries. If they meet our spec and certifications and so on, we can swap out those batteries for ours and then reverse engineer the vehicles. We can also, through the sort of the patented technology of our new fleet of franchise manufacturing, you can reverse engineer quite a lot of our vehicle parts. So you then reduce or increase the sustainability because you're reducing the carbon footprint. You can offset that because of shipping and so on. So if Africa produces batteries that are better, we can then use those batteries in our vehicles. It becomes that patriotic made in Africa, or made in the Emirates, or made in the Kingdom, or made in Portugal, wherever it may be. That's where I see the future. What the end result is, I'll let everyone else decide, and we just follow what works. And yes, we've got the environmental sustainable element, but in terms of you guys, where do you see the future, and what is the, I suppose, what is the battery tech behind your vehicles, and where are you in terms of launching? Literally.
So on the battery tech is everybody actually does this question. So we don't mind. We don't mind. There's 150 manufacturers of batteries last time we checked, and there's going to be probably 50 more in less than a year. So we're gonna pick whatever the best technology is available. We're not want to be married with one brand because the competitor will have something better at no time. And now we're looking at some batteries that are flexible, that are gonna blow your mind, because actually you can put them in weird places where you didn't think that you can fix a battery. So that's actually pretty amazing. The other thing is, if you're looking if we go nuts now, we go very futuristic, we might not need batteries. There's already technology of plasma. It's huge, weight, very heavy and everything, but there's few people working on plasma energy plants that are actually the size of my half of my body, don't weigh maybe 20 kilograms, and they don't stop producing energy. You crank it in with nothing but a little bit of water, less than a bottle, and you can produce energy unlimitedly. Like, it will never stop. So now your problem for your vehicle is where you're gonna put it, how heavy it is, what are the frequencies in case you have communications or systems that actually need to seal that, and why do we need batteries anymore? We don't need to store energy, we just need to use it. So that's
Yeah,
actually
that's
pretty
incredible.
interesting. It is, and is now real. It's nothing that I just made up. It's
Yeah,
real.
I'd
It's
love to
out
speak
there.
to you more on that. I find that fascinating. And where are you as a company? Like when are you going to take off?
Yeah, so as soon as we finish this seed fund, we're in seed, although this is the oldest startup that you will ever heard, 20 years in the making. But you just know it's a lot, I know. It's been self-funded. More than $2 million has been put in the company. Now we're in the point that that's it. We need money from investors, and that's where we actually are on the fundraising side. We will be ready to build aircrafts in 20 months after we raise the initial part. We need to go through Civil Aviation Authority certification, which takes a lot of time and money and effort. We do have a team. We do have all the strategies put together, and that's where we are.
Amazing. Well, please
Thank you.
connect with me after this, because there might be
Definitely.
some connections that I can introduce you to. And yeah, I just love to be a part of your journey.
Thank
Definitely,
you.
definitely. You're very welcome.
I think it's a collaborative partnership between the ground, the first mile connectivity, last mile connectivity with the air transportation. Then, if you work out a sustainable model, it will come out with great. You will get easy funding too. That's what I believe in.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Collaboration is everything on
Very much
the
required on the
startup
ground side.
world.
First mile connectivity and last mile connectivity. Maybe things can work out. So
I have
thank you.
shared my LinkedIn on the chat just for everybody. If you want to approach me, we're very welcome.
Thank you. It was a great insight. There was a question, I think one question for Adam. How do you calculate the return?
The return. Oh, so if you look at the current cost of ownership of an ICE or petrol motorcycle, and we've done a lot of data research. So we actually built the first vehicles by asking a lot of questions to Kareem. What do you need from a delivery bike? What is your cost of fuel per month? And there's one company that said they had 353 bikes and they're spending 75,000 dirhams a month in fuel. There's another company that said they've got a fleet of 500 and they're spending 215,000 dirhams a month in fuel. And sorry, 500 vehicles and 265,000 dirhams a month in servicing and maintenance. So it's just by asking a lot of questions to understand the parts, and it's taken a good 18 months to be accurate on this. And some companies 300 dirhams a month, as I said, or some 450 a month in fuel. So once you divide that into how many kilometers they're driving a day, you've got this formula of 65,000, just over 65,000 dirhams over a 3-year lifespan. And so it's not a case of what is the initial cost of the vehicle. It's from a business point of view, what is that going to save you? If you look at the cost of a vehicle on say the Electra or even one of the rider range, the e-bikes, then we've just priced ourselves slightly below market because we are a new brand, but we come with all the warranties to give peace of mind. So that's how we've priced and calculated.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Saul, for the great insight.
Saul, take care,
Very
Ken.
interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look
Thank
forward.
you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.